This week on the podcast, I have Ross Ward. Ross is an athlete whom I've been coaching for a few months, and he recently finished his first 50K race at the Minor 49er at the Mines of Spain recreation area in Iowa. And he did a fantastic job, put in a ton of work through training, and we got together to talk about nutrition and training and everything Ross learned through the work over the past year. I think you're going to get a ton out of this interview, so let's get to it. Welcome to the Eat Well, Sleep Great, Run Far podcast. My name is Will Frantz, and I'm here to help you go farther, faster, and longer without injuries, gut problems, or giving up your favorite foods. This week on the podcast, I have Ross Ward. He's an athlete I've been coaching for the past few months, and he recently finished his first 50K. Is that right, Ross?
First 50K race.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
What race did you just do?
So that was the Mines of Spain 50K in Mines of Spain rec area in here in Iowa.
Yeah.
The eastern part of the state. It was out and back for two, I guess you call them laps, 2 out and backs on that, right? So it's a really nice course. It was nice wide trails, and it was a lot of elevation for Iowa. Most people would be shocked about that. There was probably, if you believe your GPS app, there was 3,500, 3,600 foot of elevation. They report 4,000, 4,400 feet, whatever it was. Had good elevation. It wasn't a classic Iowa race, right?
Yeah, I mean, people who listen to the podcast, I had Scott on here a couple of weeks ago talking about the 100-miler at the Mines of Spain. And when I first looked into coaching him for that, I was shocked by how much elevation there was out in the middle of Iowa at this rec area, right? So yeah, for sure.
Exactly. And I think I was about half crazy for selecting that one for my first race. And it's just because of the elevation pieces. I could have found something a little more, but it was a fun race. It was an incredible experience, and it kind of fed into, the challenge aspect of it that I love to pursue those kind of things. So, it was a great race. The course was wide, man. It was, you had 3 or 4 lanes. I could have probably drove a truck up and down most of the course, and it was all trail. So that was cool. That made it great.
That's awesome, man. It's a lot. I don't know. Sometimes the single track, as much as I enjoy it, it can get a little stressful when we're talking passing and moving around. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And your foot placement, I find myself wandering side to side sometimes on narrow trails. And that really, I think I've messed up some things in my hip because I wasn't prepared for that kind of thing. Right.
Yeah, I feel that, especially someone who has my joint struggles. I can see where that might come in. Yeah. So for the minor 49er, right? That's what they call
minor
it.
49er. That's it.
Awesome. Yep. So if we're looking at that race, what, other than wide trails, how was it? How was the race?
Well, it was, I have to say it was probably pretty tough, actually. It started out raining, which for me, it was good because it kept me cool. I'm very adverse to heat and sweating, right? But we went through that a lot this summer, struggling with the training aspects of it. But the rain, as though it worked good for me, it was really hard on the trail. we had most of the inclines were turned to mud before it was over with because everybody's powering up the short inclines, right? So you're really digging in, and you dig in on soft soil, and when you're the last guys coming through on the track, you're really wading deep by that time. Slick bridges, about like ice, right? But a fellow runner that I ended up finishing the race with, he said it was basically the hardest race he's done. He had done a 50 or 100K a month before, and run a marathon every month this year. He's like, this is the hardest one I ever did because of the conditions, the moisture and cold. And so it was a tough race. I just take his experience for it because that's really my first race like that. So it was pretty incredible that way.
That's awesome, man. I mean, yeah, I saw some of the videos and everything of you out there, and it looked like you had a really good time. And in spite of the slightly what we might call hectic environment, It looked sloppy too, though. So I'm glad you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, that was the whole race for me. I was zoned out, right? It's just that dopamine high or whatever it is determined to finish the race and not think about the hard things. But man, it was uh, it really challenged us. Really challenged us in a fun way
Yeah, I
too.
can see that. I think that's partially why we do these things, right? So, like, if you're looking at
Yeah.
that, like, what did you learn from doing this race?
Oh wow, teamwork. The first of all, just the fact that I always try to do things solo. I've been a solo guy and been searching and hunting, trying to learn to run faster and run further, and I just wasn't getting there by myself. Right, it wasn't intuitive, and I found you basically 14 months ago. We started working, really started following you on your Facebook page with your podcasts and videos, and so the training aspect of it was a huge, like you can't do it by yourself. I couldn't do it. I think a lot of people might be able to, but I couldn't. The support from you and the family, and then when on the race day, support at the track. My wife was there. I needed her to help shuttle things. Our drop bag got missed, so we got to the end of the first loop, and it's like there's only 2 drop bags here, and not one of them, and neither one of them are the one I have, right? And she happened to be there with stuff, and so that helped hugely. And she was at every aid stop along the way in another place. So it was always good to have that encouragement from Debbie, my wife, and then another part of it, the solo part of it is the runner I ended up meeting up with. We run together, basically pace each other for the entire race, the way it worked out. He run good on the flats and he would leave me behind, but we ended up meeting up at every aid station stop, every turnaround. We showed up at the same time. We finished within like 5 minutes of each other. But we leapfrogged, and so his accompanying me there kept our minds, kept us focused and driving forward. So huge learning experience there for me on race day. That helped a lot in getting through, and seemed like there was some other things.
Yeah. Hey, I'll
was
give you a pause for a sec. So, like, if we're looking at the teamwork thing, I think it is so valuable, right? Like, and especially you had
Oh yeah.
Debbie there for you and like pulled into, like, this is such a solo sport. Like, at the end of the day, most of us probably spend a good amount of time out there running alone, whether that's our preference or not. It just to put in this amount of mileage, like a lot of the time we end up out there solo. And come race day, like, there's almost always going to be this like group of people that bonds together, whether you train with them or not, or you just met them that morning. Like, I got into the sport partially by working at aid stations, right? There's at the very least going to be someone in an aid station who like hands you something so you can keep kicking the crap out of yourself. And that's kind of like that's kind of where we are, right? So I'm really glad that you were able to like have that support structure there.
Yeah, and it wasn't, and even beyond that, just the training aspect of it. How important it was to have the training. But they have the nutrition prepared and worked through ahead of time. So when you did get that frantic race day, I got to get done kind of thing. Your habits. There were a few habits that I had taken on that were good for me, and those kicked in, and nutrition was one of them. There was a point in the race, I'm like, man, I said, I don't feel like eating, and I just keep pushing for a little bit, and I didn't, 5 minutes later, I said, no, so Ross, you need some more carbs. You're getting low. You're starting to bump. You just got to eat something. And so that the habit was there, even though I questioned it at time. And that the training was just huge, because I didn't, before I would just run till I wrecked, and then I'd walk. Right? I had that slogan: I'll run near, I'll run far, and walk back to my car. That was my strategy. I just go until I kill myself, basically, and then walk.
Love that.
So, that was huge, right? The
Yeah.
training aspect, being prepared. There's so many times I've gone out and I just go till I hurt so bad I stop, and then I just start walking, and
I think that's
over and
probably
over.
I think that's probably true for a lot of people listening to this, right? Like a lot of us have that like very go hard until we explode mentality.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
it
Yep.
takes, I think this is one of those things where someone who trains like a fairly wide variety of people in my daily life, like there's some people who need to hear the like, come on, get off the couch message.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most of the time when I'm talking to my running clients, it's all right, we need to like dial it back a little bit message, right? Like it's kind of there. And so I'm going to pull us back a second. If we're looking at nutrition,
Yeah.
everything, people always love to hear like what works, because some days you're going to find some things work. So we're just like popping ideas. What worked for you as nutrition to like fuel you through this race?
Yeah, I mean that was the sugars, right? That was the paradox of the training. You want to eat good on non-race days, right? Have a good eating habit, but on race day you've got to have sugar and you got to have the carbs. And I used a lot of fruit-based stuff and practiced with it, and with juices and even gummies, right? And those were my mainstay. Some fruit bars even, but it took me a while to learn that bacon doesn't work, right? Macaroni and cheese does not work before a run. Certainly not 2 bowls of it. It may taste good, but your gut does not appreciate you.
It's not for me, man. I know people who run on like nothing but peanut butter and bacon and stuff, and I'm just like, nah, that's coming back.
Oh yeah. No, it didn't work, right? And my the pecan pie was my favorite. I thought, oh man, this thing's loaded with sugar. This would be great. And then we talked and said, Ross, that's got like 10 sticks of butter in it,
right? Yeah. If you've made one, you're very well aware how much like butter is in pie. So yeah, for sure, dude.
Yep. So there was a lot of wrecking I did in training, but it helped. I can't believe this. I actually have lost my taste for Twinkies. That was another one of those. Hey, here's sugar. This is gonna be great. I'm gonna eat this. I'm gonna go out for a run, and I'm out, and I'm like, my stomach's hating me right now. What is wrong?
Yeah, I can see that. There's like, and I think a lot of the time we think about, and I think this is where we end up with problems in our like low carb mentality a lot of the time, because so many of these foods that are like high carb foods, right? Like if we look at pastries and desserts and potato chips and French fries and all these things, if we look at them calorically, they're actually higher percentage fat than they are carbohydrate, right? So if we look at like that breakdown, yeah, they're high carb foods. They're higher fat foods. They're just high caloric foods. So when that often gets us into trouble in the diet realm. And when we were looking to fuel our running, like all of that mentality that we've had shoved at us for years in the diet world that you can't escape and ever comes to play when we're trying to fuel our runs, and it often causes problems.
The other huge thing for me about nutrition was understanding how much your body can actually handle, right? I come from a culture of we eat buffet. That's our favorite food, just buffet, everything. And when you was younger, you could do that, right? You just eat, your metabolism went away. And understanding certainly on race day, your stomach can handle so many calories or so many grams of certain things, and you help teach that. You explain that this is very analytical. It's not something nebulous out there that we don't understand. It's like this is set in stone, kind of, Ross.
Yeah, at least some degree. Like we'll learn a little bit more, but it's not infinite, right? Yep. And if we have this buffet mentality, your body will eventually figure out most of that. But on race day, like you're kind of time bound. So we need to get it out of your stomach. Yes, it really matters. So you had also mentioned that you like learned a good amount through this training process. Like what, and like set some really good habits. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Like metabolism, your core. My original concept for cross training was to do hill repeats and climb stairs. And I just didn't have a concept for it, right? The whole idea that I needed metabolism, and I thought running, would build muscle. And it don't. It actually, as you indicated, we actually tear our muscles up and deplete ourselves if that's all we do is run, right? Your body just basically cannibalizes itself, right?
Yeah, especially if you don't refuel, right? And your muscles
Yeah.
will build in the way that you teach them. So like a lot of runners will have like, I mean, really strong legs, right? So like my roommate in college, he could probably squat as much as I could at the time. But upper body strength, little to none, right? So like
Yeah.
your body will learn what you teach it to do. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So, I mean, that understanding how the core work, and it affects your running style too, right? Your lower, your whole core, as you run, your whole body's shaking around, basically moving around. So that plays into that, and not just, my own metabolism, so I can eat, not just starve myself from a diet perspective, right?
Absolutely.
So
100%.
that was huge. The stretching piece, right, and targeting muscles that you have no connection with. There were so many things I didn't have a connection. Like, you want me to do what? I don't get this. I don't have no connection there. That don't work. What do you mean?
I get that. Yeah.
Like the
I think
glute,
everybody has some of that.
right? If you push with your glute, I don't feel that, right?
Yeah.
I think we talked about this of doing the one leg, single leg, the single leg
Bridges.
bridges. Yeah.
Yeah.
My hamstring wants to take over, and the comment was, well, just hang in there, keep it going, it'll give up. It's cramping. No, it'll give up, don't worry. What do you mean it'll give up? I think it's going to squirt outside of my leg, because you need to find your glute, forget the hamstring.
I think that's more of a comment from your PT than it was for me, but yeah,
It was,
absolutely.
yeah. You helped coach me through that. So, yep, that's the way that stuff works, right?
I have a slightly different policy on that front, but yeah, absolutely. Like that is one strategy for sure. Yeah.
The drill sergeant style, right?
Yeah.
Just suck it up.
So if we're looking at like some of that training stuff, like I think some of it also plays into background. And so I know you used to play basketball quite a bit. Love to hear a little bit about like athletic background, and then like what got you into running, because as everybody knows, like ultra running is a crazy sport. So like what got you to a point that you wanted to go run tens of miles in the woods?
Sure, absolutely. The basketball was my love from high school. I never actually played competitively in organized sports, but I played pickup games, and I was very driven, very determined. I'm a short guy. I'm about 5'6", but I boast I had my vertical was over 30 inches. It's just I could leap, and I could do it like lots of times in a row. It wasn't just I just had springs in my legs. So I love to play. I got to play with some great athletes at the University of Arkansas during pickup games. But so I had a lot of leg strength, and probably agility. I think probably carries over. Ankle strength. I've even Saturday when I run the race, I turned on the side of my ankles, at least one on each ankle, but there was no effect for it. It didn't hurt me any. I still don't understand that, but my legs just have the agility and the strength there. And I think part of that was from basketball days. Maybe before that I was a farm kid, so I hauled hay and fed feed buckets, and you did stuff, all the, split firewood and a lot of stability type things. But, when it got into running, that really, my first introduction to running, there was a guy that liked to run marathons, and that just freaked me out. I said, you can't do that. And this was in my early 20s. And that probably, he gave me the first advice that has probably been the what pushed me the furthest when I run. He's like, I never run a marathon to practice. I only run, 5 miles here, 5 miles there. And I might run a, 10 or 12 or 15 miles on the weekend. And so the whole concept was, hey, if you can run 1 mile, you can run 2. So he never run more than 12 at a time, and he went to run a marathon. So if I could run 12, I can run 26. So, yesterday I run 5. So tomorrow I go run 10 and walk back to my car.
Oh God. I
Right.
have opinions about that training strategy, but it's really true. Like there is I've heard this attributed to a couple people. But I'll attribute it to Mackenzie, who was on this podcast, because I don't know who to actually put it to, but she was quoting somebody who said, like, when think you're 100% down, you're probably actually 40% down, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard that attributed to Goggins and a few people, but it's very, you have a lot more mental game than you think you do most of the time.
Yeah. Well, I'd always had this expectation if I could done that, unrealistic, so if I can do 15, I can do 30. Why not? I've already done half of it. I just got to do it again.
Yeah.
So that was when I was in my early 20s. And what really got me into running is I had a coworker, my first job as an engineer, and he liked to run. So we just started running. We'd run basically 3 times a week, but it was all 5K stuff. Run 2 or 3 miles, and we got at best we was sub 7-minute miles, which was okay.
Pretty good.
People run a lot faster than that.
Yeah, people also train pretty hard to try to run like sub 25K. So if you're running sub 7-minute miles for 3 miles, like pretty good, dude. Yeah.
And it was fun. Kenny Dickerson. And that we did that we worked together for a year and a half was about it. But it was a great experience. And then really what it came down to, and this is where trail running come into play. About 2015, I'm an outdoorsman, and I've always been outdoors, been a solo hunter. So I'm spend a lot of time outside in the woods by myself, but trail running is just, that's just not something that I linked together. And in 2015, I decided, man, I'm going to go elk hunting. I've been dreaming about this. And so I just finally got a place in life, said, forget work, I'm going hunting. And so the end of August, I made the commitment. And about 12 weeks later, I took off on a solo elk hunt, a backpack about 10 miles into the Weemanooch Wilderness of the Pine River in Colorado. And part of that training plan that I put together for myself, because I didn't know, I need a backpack, I need to run. So my cardio was to run, right? And so that's what I did. And that began my experience, right? And it was cool. I can go on here for quite a while, actually, about the experience. I met my first trail runner on that trip. I went in for a recon 2 weeks before season, and I'm with a 45-pound pack. I'm 5 miles in, 4 or 5 miles in, and this young lady with her pup cruised past me running the trail. I'm like, what is she doing? Because I'm dying. I've already stopped and rested a couple of times. I'm booked. The elevation, the weight, and everything, I'm just done. And she's just trotting along.
Love it.
Casual pace. If there was somebody with her, she'd been chit-chatting because she just had that cardio. And then when she come back by, I'm like, how far did you run? And she's like, oh, I went about 7.5. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And that was my first introduction to trail running.
That's awesome.
I didn't know you could do that. Right. And it was actually also the first time I did my first endurance event before I knew much about it. Because at the end of that elk hunt in November of 2015, I did my first 50 miler. I was backpacking. I was hunting. It took me 28 hours. But for me, it was like, man, wow. And my metabolism and adrenaline was going for like days after that. I was just, that was the classic. I went from basically a couch, a desk job to a 50 miler, like 28 hours, but doggone. That was very memorable. And that's really what got me started.
It's far, Ross. Yeah. That's awesome. What was the 50 miler like? Were you just out there hunting through the woods for a couple days, or just like go for straight, or what was that?
So I killed an elk Tuesday morning. And by 11 o'clock, I field dressed it at 11 o'clock. I packed up my camp halfway, hiked out, made a call. So it's 10 mile out and back. And I called the outfitter to come get my elk. I hike back in the middle of the night. I get scared because he's been putting fear into me about snow and the snowstorm. It's blizzard. This horrendous blizzard's coming through. So I'm freaked out. And at 9 o'clock at night, I'm 20 miles in right now, up in the wilderness by myself, and I get freaked out. And I said, okay, I got to go out. I'm not going to sleep tonight. It's not going to work out. I got to go out, and I don't know if they'll even be able to get up here tomorrow because of the snow. That's how much fear he put into me about this. So I hike out. So there's 30 miles. I drive all the way into town and literally get a motel room and sleep for a couple hours. And then the next morning I get up at like 5, drive back to the trailhead and hike back in with the outfitter to go get my elk. Pack up the rest of my camp. They pack up my elk, and then after all that's done, I hike back out. And so there's your 50.
And I'm assuming it didn't snow.
No, it snowed. The last 20 miles I did in 6 to 12 inches of snow, wet snow too.
Wow, that's a rough. You must have just been post hole into your knees.
It was messy, wet. I actually wore my waders out. I, I got a whole different story I could talk about how to backpack, and that was the place I learned what not to take. But I had some waders with me, and I actually put them on and wore them back out because my pants were froze solid.
I know a lot of ski industry employees who like wear muck boots all the time because they're great. I mean, not the thing to wear on ice, right? Like they have no traction. But if they're like sloppy, like, yeah, man, it's great.
Well, then I moved to Idaho, and it's like we play in the snow up there. This snow is. I learned to respect snow, but I don't fear it anymore. You know, I know how to get around in it. Yeah. I wore my trail shoes and runs in snow, and my feet are. I know a lot of people have trouble with that, but my feet are okay with it as long as I keep moving.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. So, like, that kind of got you into running, and what made you decide that you kind of wanted to pursue this further and make that next step?
Like the next step as far as ultra running was just realizing how much fun it was exploring, because that just fed back into my personality. I love the outdoors. I love hunting. So that fed back into that, and that just, you get to do more of it and faster. You know, I get to share it with people. I have been able to take and guide people on backpacking and hunting trips up that same area, which is cool. But as far as, continuous improvement part of it, I'm always trying to get better in the running aspect. I've always wanted to do better, faster. My pace, I am super slow. I may be able to go all day, but I don't go as, so I've been struggling with that aspect of it. Personally, I want to be faster and try to improve on that. And that's what led me to you, because even the nutrition part, my brother-in-law is like, Ross, you need to get a nutritionist. And then when, last summer, when we become friends on Facebook and been following your stuff, it's like, oh man, you got the perfect thing. You got the running background and the nutrition background. This is the guy. Like, you can help me right down the line of what I'm trying to do. And so it's been great working together and all the information you put out. So that's been awesome.
I appreciate that. And it's been fun working with you too. So I guess I'll ask this now. I was going to ask it later, but like, what was it like having a coach through this endeavor? Like, what made you want to go for it? How have you found your progress? Like, I know since you played basketball in the past, you've been coached in the past. Like, that's pretty inevitable. But I know for no coach at all.
Interesting. It was all just solo. I just pick up from people or watching Michael Jordan play basketball on TV.
Really? All right, cool. I kind of figured you're on a team or something. Great. So like, if we're looking at like first experience with coaching, how was it?
It was great. I mean, it was a learning curve for me. I wasn't used to structure. You probably noticed this, but there was some point in the process here, I'm like, Will's putting a lot of time into this. I need to follow the plan. That wasn't day one. That was a few weeks in.
Well, we also started, and you didn't have like a race on the calendar. We had this nebulous goal of like get better, right? Which is
right. That's right.
A little harder to structure in general. So yeah, that's fair. But then we got a race on the calendar, and you dialed in a little more.
Well, in my own personal workouts were really just fun runs. So everything I did was when I was comfortable, when I felt good. There wasn't a structure to it. If I run, 10 miles one week and 20 the next week, that was just what I did. And the structure helped me be committed to it, right? It's like, you need to go out and you do need to get out. There's a reason why there's a structure to this. There's a pattern we're following, and it helped me be a lot more disciplined and realize the effort that I needed to put into it to be successful. And I had to work through that though, right? I just kind of rolled where I wanted to roll. If a lot of the runs that all the runs I ever did, I did them fully recovered because that was just the way my mentality was. I wanted to feel a bit as good as I could. And that I think a lot of what we did was, you keep developing, even though you may be a little tired, you still get benefit from doing some workouts. And that helped in that regard, I thought. And the nutrition coach, helping understand what was going on with my body. It's like, yeah, Ross, don't eat that Twinkie. That Twinkie's full of fat, and your body's not going to like that. Bacon, it's not going to go. So we worked through a lot of. You helped work through a lot of things like that I was just naive to. I didn't realize how that affected my body, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear, people have heard me say this. Like, I have nothing against like the inclusion of those foods in your diet, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
doing it right before you go out for a run when you're trying to push an intensity session is not yet necessarily the best idea. So yeah, 100%.
And I had experienced that to finally figure it out. I finally made the connection, those connections that we always talk about. I connected that gut problems with my Twinkie that I ate. I'm like, okay, don't do that before your runs, Ross. So
yeah,
but the structure really, this having a coach and able to encourage me along the way and convey the message, that this is what we're trying to achieve, right? I was just, not understanding how to get from point A to point B, and you help fill in those gaps a lot.
I appreciate that. I'm glad I was able to help on that.
Oh, and the other part, adapting. I run a couple of races earlier in the year, short races, right, little 5K, 10K things, and it helped. Here's how basically you manage your week. You want to taper a little bit for this, and those all learning experiences. All that was learning experience. Oh, you went on this hike and you trashed your body. Okay, Ross, this week we need to take this a little differently, right? So you're able to adapt to what's going on, because I think you've talked about this. Training plans don't always go as planned. So
Never.
Having a personal trainer, you're like, okay, Ross, here's where you're at. You need to go this, we'll teach her a little bit here for this reason. That's huge. Yeah.
I feel like plan is, I don't know. It's a vague term. It's a structure. It's a general whatever. Training plans are super helpful. We should definitely have a general concept as we go through, but that is the advantage to either knowing a ton about it yourself or hiring someone who does, because your plan is not going to happen. I've never met anybody whose plan went perfectly. And even if you're pretty close, something's going to fall off, and knowing how to make that adaptation or adapting the plan when it's time is needed. And you don't always need someone else to do that for you, but you need to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I needed that because I had no background to help me with that. It was not, honestly, running was not intuitive. I just always thought this was intuitive. You just go out and run.
And
walk back to your car. That's what I did. It
wasn't for me, man. Running's never been intuitive for me. There's a reason I've never made progress on it until the past year or two. I've always just tried to kill myself until I was done, and then wondered why I wasn't seeing any forward movement. Right?
Yes.
This is just kind of how this works. There's a lot of science to this process.
I was amazed that you was able to help navigate so much of that for me. And I know this next year, I'll still continue to go through, try and make those adaptations, continue to learn and progress on the nutrition part and the training part, the running workouts that we did, implement those and learn from them. And it's really advanced what I know understand about nutrition. Still have a lot to learn, but it's just been great that way, as well as running. We worked on running form too. We talked about that a lot, your cadence and your form and what muscles are engaging and when, and those kind of things. And all that was very, very helpful, even all along the way.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm really glad to hear all that. Well, if we're talking kind of into next year, what do you have on the horizon? What's next for you? What are you thinking? Do you have races you're looking to do, or big trips, or what's coming next?
Yeah, I'm not sure if my legs or mine are ready to commit to another ultra yet.
It was a week ago. I'm not that surprised.
Yeah, I went up for a run day before yesterday, and my legs didn't trust me yet. They're like, "No, we're not doing this, Ross. You need to go back home." Last time we went out, this did not end well, Ross. Go home. So, but right. But after the pain goes away, I honestly, I have a vague memory of the pain, but I have a huge the memory of the accomplishment and the everything that you put into it. The results of all that is what really weighs heavier. And so I've got that drive to go back. I know it's there, maybe tamper a little bit. So I would love to run more ultras, and I'm 99% sure I will. I have a bucket list one, and I've let my friends know there in Idaho Falls. There's a race director there has the Puts Palisades Ultra up in the Palisade Mountains there in the western part of Wyoming. They have a 50K or a 50 miler that I'm very intrigued by. Loved running up in the mountains. That's a bucket list. Love to travel for that. I'm not sure what it's going to take for me to be able to complete that one. It's not an Iowa 50K. This is a mountain race, and it's very, very different.
Yeah, hiking, like more uphill work is probably the answer. Like that's
a lot more. Yeah. So
and like really targeting that speed work. I mean,
yep.
Yeah, that's going to be most of it.
and then plus the elevation changed. We live about 1,000 foot of elevation here in Iowa, and it's going to start out 5,000 or 6,000 foot of elevation right off the bat. So, and it's in the summer, which is my nemesis.
That one's going to get you.
Don't do well in the summer. So, but I don't see getting away from running more ultras. Even if it's self-supported. I had run one self-supported 50K before this as a really kind of a dare and as a challenge. I got some discounts actually for the Putz race for running. They inspired me to go ahead and do it. That and my wife, I have to tell this story. I think she'll let me tell it. We were you'll like this. We were at the one of the local outdoor stores, REI, looking at the nutrition for running. The goose and all the honey things, and I said, this stuff is for if you run ultras, run 30, 50 miles and those kind of things. Says, oh, you're never gonna do that. I'm like, oh, I'm not. That was just the challenge, right? So, oh, well, now I am. So it's always out there, but even beyond running, it's a habit of working on core, keeping my metabolism up, being regular with the gym and physical activity, physical workouts. That's going to be continuation and continue to work on my nutrition, on just daily living nutrition, to be able to eat better and try to eat down my bacon store that I've got. I can't just get rid of it. I got to eat it, but after I get through it, I'll have to question and talk to myself about what we're going to do with bacon. So that's what I kind of see for going forward for the next year and beyond. Probably some more elk hunts. I just guide people on backpacking trips and elk hunts. I love those. That's awesome.
Love it. That's awesome, Ross. I think all that really sounds good. So I guess like the last question I ask everybody is like, is there another message that you want to get out to people or say or like spread? You've done so much like good work here, and I really appreciate all the kind words. I really do. But like, what might you still want to share with people before we hang this up?
Yeah, but honestly, it's the be able to work through the nutrition and the training plan and workouts and even the psychology. We got into that some. We talk about the getting our head out of our way. I struggle with that personally, but just in the one-on-one part of it, right? Because you're able to help work through things. You're knowledgeable about stuff that I'm just completely naive about, right? So it was just awesome to be able to work through those things, and that was great. It's just I couldn't have got through any of this without the coaching involved, because I've tried before and it didn't work out so well.
Yeah, and
struggling, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I'm kind of the same way, and as you said, like so much of this is a mental game, right? Like it's hard. Like this is a hard thing. Running for hours at a time is a thing that like your body is not going to be a huge fan of. Like this is true. This is kind of how I present things with everybody. Like it's why I ask people why they do ultras, because like you need to have a bit of a driving force for it, because you're not going to do it every day. Kind of the same thing. Like if I'm talking to someone in person about fat loss or which have you, like all that matters is your like averages over time for all of these things. And if you constantly like miss every other day because you just don't want to do it, then we're probably not going to make a lot of progress. And I almost promise you that you're often not going to want to do it. So we got to figure out ways to like make that happen anyway.
And that, it gets to the structure piece of it, because I would, if I didn't feel good, I just stayed in bed, right? Or I stayed in the house, or they'll look good outside, so I'm not going out. But right, the plan motivated me to stay after things, and that helped. That accountability, the structure, that was just huge, because I think one of the things that I remember hearing from you, you may have quoted somebody else, but to do hard things, you have to do hard things.
Yeah.
And, to run fast, you need to run fast, and all those things out, so those are cool,
Yeah. Doing hard stuff makes the next hard thing easier. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those, and I really feel you on the plan thing. Like you and I are different in the sense I'm not a huge fan of running in the rain. And I did it last weekend for like 15 miles because it was what I needed to do to get ready for this race I have coming up next week. And I'm trying to remember this stat. So I think they've shown that if you just have a plan, like a good plan, it has to be one that's actually going to take you to your goals. But if you just have a plan, you increase your chances of success by like 60% because you have something holding you accountable. Yep. And I think if you have like good coaching with that plan, key on the good part, but key on like good coaching with a good plan, you increase your chances like to over 90% because you'll actually like have someone, it's not just the accountability, it's also the like support and ability to adapt and all these things. But even just a plan will often increase your success by a lot.
Yep. I could tell it helped me a lot, on the days I didn't want to, I still done it anyways. And pushing back-to-back runs. That was when I really started struggling. It was like, oh, wait a minute, I can run the day after a long run. It wasn't always easy, but it was all good. It was all good. It was a very, very a great learning experience, and it helped is critical to reaching that goal of completing that race, and within the time constraint. It was 9 hours, but doggone, that was for me, that was hard.
I feel that.
And
so we're all gonna have those, right? Like what I'm doing, I'm not worried about the cutoff time, but I think it's going to be a little closer to the cutoff time than it is halfway to the cutoff time. I think this is one of those things when you set the goals that actually challenge you that like they're going to be hard, man. I think that's part of it.
Well, and in that race, I didn't mention this earlier, but it's a 9 hour cutoff, and I finished in like 6 minutes left or something. I was, 9 hours or 8 hours and 50 minutes on the nose, just about, right? So
pretty much,
I had no time to leave anything on the table on that one.
I will say you were styling far shorter than that, though, and I think I don't know, you had not that far to go, about 2 hours out. I think if you needed to push it, you could have. Right? Yeah. And the goal was to finish, like very clearly that was the goal. Yeah. Yep. So you let yourself not destroy yourself in the effort to do that. Yep. But I would also say that if you probably could have finished like 20, 30 minutes earlier if you were willing to like end up with hip problems the next day or something. Yep. Right. So right. And I'm glad you made the choice you did, because that's why we set these goals at the start, where it's like, I want to finish and I don't want to be screwed up for weeks. Right. Yep. So I think that's really good. Yep. Oh man, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else you want to share with people before we hang up?
Well, I don't. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the work you've done with me to help me get to this point. So learn a lot of things, a lot of things to continue to apply this next year. So
it was a pleasure, Ross. And I appreciate you coming on here. Hang out for a second. Everybody else, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back here soon. Thanks. Thank you for listening to the show. To be clear, I'm not a doctor nor a registered dietitian, and nothing you heard was medical advice. You should always speak with a qualified medical professional before making any changes to your training regimen. If you enjoy the podcast or found it useful, please take a couple seconds to give it a rating or share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. And if you want more of this information, please head to the Trail and Ultra Running Nutrition group on Facebook. You'll be in good company with other like-minded people who like to do hard stuff outside.